Wow, I like that. Wow, world of wonder. So wise folks throughout the ages have said that wonder is one of these core experiences at the heart of genuine religious faith. Wonder. Awe before God is the beginning of wisdom, according to Proverbs. Wonder, awe, reverence before holy mystery, before glimpses of divine transcendence, before experiences of sacred presence. These are all at the heart of faith. It's also been said that wonder is the beginning of philosophy. Plato said this. Aristotle said this. Wonder is also said to be at the root of scientific exploration. Many folks who pursue science will tell you about some formative experience of astonishment in their pursuit of scientific questions. Whether that's looking through the microscope and seeing a teeming world of life in a single drop of ocean water, or looking through a telescope and witnessing the radiant bodies in the infinite reaches of the universe, or that aha moment when the formulas of a theory click into place and some new dimension of the universe's elegance appears before yourself. Wow. So all of this is no coincidence. The experience of wonder, or as I like to say, the posture of being that we call wonder, that kind of way of being, the wowness of wow kind of experience. This is the fertile common ground that's shared by faith and by science. Because it's getting at something fundamental that's true and good about what it means to be human in this universe of God's creation. So, as many of you here know, faith and science don't at all need to be enemies, threatening each other with mutual annihilation. We have in our church community here quite a few folks who are trained in the sciences and who work in the fields of science or medicine or technology or scientific communication and so on. And I've just had a really wonderful time through the years now, I can say, of hearing from many of you just some really thoughtful and beautiful ways of how you understand scientific investigation to be supportive and deepening of your life and faith. So we're in good company with that through the ages. From John Calvin of Calvinist fame to Pope Francis of Pope fame to Isaac Newton of Newtonian physics fame and Werner Heisenberg of quantum mechanics fame and countless other working scientists who are deeply faithful people of faith, as well as people of faith who are deeply impressed with the work of science, whether or not we really understand it. So now it's also true that many religious folks through the ages have seen scientific investigation as a threat to their faith and have tried to suffocate it or burn it at the stake. Copernicus, Galileo were themselves, I'll have you know, sincere Christians from start to finish. But at the same time, as you know, they were attacked as heretics by the Catholic Church at the time for arguing that the earth orbits around the sun rather than the other way around. Catholic teaching, by the way, has since changed to fit the science. So maybe that's not so essential, that part. And for their part, many scientists have gone to battle against any and all religious thought as being fundamentally stupid and dangerous. Not to put too fine a point on it. But, you know. At the same time, both religion and science have been used to advance and to justify some pretty bad stuff through the ages. Violence, racism, exploitation, you name it. Injustices of every kind have been done under the cover of religion as well as science. Tyrants have come in all flavors, I'm sorry to report, from devoutly religious to fervently atheist. And so have your garden variety know-it-alls with their sneering sense of superiority, which I, for the record, have never been in either my atheist phase or my religious phases of life. All right, this is just about other people. So, bottom line is that we are not going to cure human sin by rejecting science on the one hand, or by rejecting God on the other hand. And you'll see how people have sort of argued that we could, right? Of like, all our problems will go away if we get rid of those crazy God people. All our problems are going to go away if we get rid of these science people and how they're ruining everything. Right? Sorry, it's not going to work that way. Rather, if we truly care about what is good and what is true, as people of faith, if we truly seek to know and to follow our ever-living God, our still-speaking God, it's important that we find ways to embrace and reconcile religious faith and the scientific pursuit of knowledge. And wonder can be our guide. So Francis Collins is a biochemist whose life work has been focused on exploring how genes work, figuring out genetics, for the sake of developing medical treatments for diseases. And he was the director of the groundbreaking Human Genome Project. It made a lot of headlines when they completed that, which is mapping the human genome, which is a project of the National Institute of Health. And Francis Collins also led that agency's efforts to develop a COVID vaccine in record time, which also made some headlines. So Collins has written and spoken extensively about how his personal beliefs evolved from an atheist orientation to becoming a committed and thoughtful Christian. So I recommend his writing and speaking, Francis Collins. And this is what Collins writes about what happened when his scientific pursuits deepened his understanding of the way that the universe works. Quote, "I found the elegant evidence of the relatedness of all living things an occasion of awe. And I came to see this as the master plan of the same Almighty, capital A, Almighty, who caused the universe to come into being and set its physical parameters just precisely right to allow the creation of stars and planets and heavy metals and life itself." So notice the awe here, the wonder. And Francis Collins is far from alone in this view, both among scientists and among people of faith through the ages. So there is a long and rich tradition of Christian thought that appreciates our ability to reason and observe as gifts from God, one of the gifts that we have. John Calvin put it this way: "Implanted in the human mind is a certain desire for investigating the truth. And when we rigorously use this gift for figuring things out about the world," this is my speaking, not Calvin anymore, "we are using one of the gifts that God has given us. And our ability to reason and to observe is one of the gifts that has helped us to survive through the generations and to thrive through the generations and to create and invent and to discover and to delight in this amazing world. And this is why human beings throughout all cultures and times have been able to survive and to thrive, one of the many gifts that we have. And the scientific method is a particularly rigorous and organized way of using these gifts of reason and observation. You following here? And at its best, the methods of science are humble, really quite humble and careful approach to finding out what's true. And it's about experimenting and exploring and gathering information and data to test if our ideas about the way things work are right, or maybe not quite. We have to show our reasoning and to have that reasoning be tested in dialogue and debate with others. We have to be willing to be proven wrong. It's a core part of science, as well as being willing to be proven right as well, or shown to be partially right and partially wrong, and to then have to change our view of things to better fit what we find to be the facts, even if that picture proves to be surprising or kind of mind-blowing. So this is kind of the virtues of science at its best, and it's a human pursuit like anything else. It's subject to the flaws and limitations and the pettiness of human beings. So none of this needs to be a threat to faith. None of this requires a materialist worldview, actually, according to which the physical world is all that there is. In fact, logical reasoning about the discoveries of science have led countless very smart people through the ages to believe that there needs to be a divine source for all of this, a divine source for all being, a primordial origin, an ultimate and transcendent reason why there is something rather than nothing. A God who creates this all and everything out of nothing, and who sets the exquisitely balanced physical laws and properties needed to keep this whole thing from collapsing in on itself. And the more that physics has figured out about just the fundamental properties of the universe, it is astonishing that there is something rather than nothing. If any one little factor or property were even just unbelievably slightly different, the Big Bang wouldn't have gotten out of the starting gate. So we need a God who sustains the very beingness of every being, so that this all and everything can flourish into this dazzling complexity of forms. All right, but what about the Bible? So there is also a deep-rooted teaching, both within Christianity and within Judaism, that the biblical accounts in our scriptures are not to be taken literally as objective history, let alone as scientific theory. It's just not the kind of writings that they are. Rather, the scriptures are meant to lead us to explore the deeper questions of meaning and value and morality and spiritual insight, and to learn awe and reverence before the glories of God and of God's ongoing self-revelation. It is a library of experiences of that self-revelation and of wrestling with what that means. So these are all vital parts of reality and of human life that science is not going to teach us. There is also, as we heard in our introduction to the scriptures, an ancient and enduring understanding within Christianity and Judaism that the natural world is one of the revelations of God's glories and creative power. And so we should honor this and study it along with the testimonies in the Bible. So it's such a gift that we are able to investigate and to learn about all of this in pursuit of what's true. And scientific investigation is one of the ways that we can listen for how God is still speaking and wonder at what we may discover. So Pope Francis had a lot to say about this. God bless him. Science and faith are grounded alike in the absolute truth of God, he said. And faith and science can be united in charity, provided that science is put at the service of people at our time and not misused to harm or to destroy. And I'll add, provided that religion, for our part, is also put in this service and not misused to harm people or harm creation, or to harm the scientific investigation of truth, of what's true. And it's a big problem when we don't. So as I said last week, one of the many crises of our times is a crisis of knowing. Some have called this a post-truth era, with too many people acting like we can just ignore any and every piece of evidence and perspective that's inconvenient to what we wish to believe. And there have been cynical and sustained threats to any independent standard for adjudicating what's true and what's false. So how do you figure it out? How do we figure this out? Okay? And this has included attacks on science and scientists. And religion has been used to justify this. So as people of faith who are called to care for what is good and what is true, we do have a lot at stake here. And we have a responsibility to be advocates for the free investigation of what is true, through the means of science and through all the other means that we have, including exploring the resources of our faith, including all the tools of reasoning and dialogue and debate, and the free exercise of the gifts that God has given us to try to figure out what's true, even though we don't always get it right. To figure out what is true and what is good. We need both what faith offers us as well as science. As Pope Francis put it, what is most important is that we do this for the sake of living out the charity to which our faith calls us and honoring the inherent worth and dignity of every child of God. So it's important that we share the ways that we know that our faith is not threatened, but in fact deepened by scientific investigation. So that's why I've spent all of this time exploring this with you. And I really am curious and excited to hear more from you about your response to this and how you personally have grown both in faith in connection with what you've learned about other ways of exploring how the universe works, including science. So I started this message about wonder, and let wonder be our guide. And so I want to end with a word for wonder, because it's important that we return to awe and wonder, and that a sincere approach to scientific exploration and a sincere approach to faith always allows us to lift above anxiety and strife and to have a more expansive view of how God is still speaking. So this is a poem called In Praise of Mystery by the former poet laureate of the United States, Ada Limon. NASA scientists engraved this poem on a spacecraft that, as we speak, is traveling through the solar system on a 108 billion mile journey to one of the moons of Jupiter called Europa. People figured out how to do that. Europa, once the spacecraft lands on Europa, it'll study this moon, because there's really good reason to believe there is a huge ocean of water under the ice of its surface. And water is it's an extraordinary substance that's perfectly tuned to make possible life as we know it on Earth. And it could be that the water on this moon of this other planet harbors living beings of some kind, or evidence of the pregnant possibilities of life. All right? So here's In Praise of Mystery, a poem for Europa by Ada Limon. Arching under the night sky, inky with black expansiveness, we point to the planets we know. We pin quick wishes on stars. From Earth, we read the sky as if it is an unerring book of the universe, expert and evident. Still, there are mysteries below our sky. The whale song, the songbird singing its call in the bough of a wind-shaken tree. We are creatures of constant awe, curious at beauty, at leaf and blossom, at grief and pleasure, sun and shadow. And it is not darkness that unites us, not the cold distance of space, but the offering of water, each drop of rain, each rivulet, each pulse, each vein. O second moon, we too are made of water, of vast and beckoning seas. We too are made of wonders, of great and ordinary loves, of small invisible worlds, of a need to call out through the dark. So for all this, my friends, I give thanks to God. Thanks be to God.